Hey guys, welcome back to Talking Wellness. We are so excited to be with you this week. My name is Kayla.
This is Michael. Hello, how are you?
And I'm Christian. Hello.
Awesome. We are so stoked for today's episode because we are coming back harder and stronger for season 2, 3?
Season 3.
OMG,
This is
season 3.
As you can see, the room looks very different.
Yes.
We've done a couple of things to make it look nicer, and there's still more things to come.
Very beginning of changes. This is the very beginning.
Yeah, this is just the start, guys. What we have planned is gonna wow you.
Yeah.
So we're
you won't
really
be seeing
excited.
these little couches too much longer.
Yeah, we're gonna say bye to these soon. Trust me, it's gonna look amazing. So
it's the process of change. It's
Yes.
gradual, but
Right,
as it comes,
yeah.
you start to see just the beautiful magic in it.
yeah,
I
there's
used to
something
always
special
tell
about
people
change.
that you gotta enjoy the journey
Yeah.
all the time.
Mhm.
Like when I did like the personal training, calisthenic stuff,
Yeah.
when they would just start, they were like little kids at the beach. I'd be like, gotta enjoy the journey, man.
You have to.
It's
man.
so
fun.
true though.
Yeah, because you think
Yeah.
of the end goal sometimes, and you don't think
Yeah.
of how you got there.
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
appreciate it. Yeah.
And you always think like it's not good enough, but I always say, man, humble beginnings, that's my thing.
Absolutely.
You know, I love to
And
watch the
speaking of
process.
journeys, we have someone in the big chair, the middle chair.
transition.
Oh
today.
yeah, that's like the big change today. I don't know if you guys noticed. If you're
Yeah.
watching on YouTube,
I'm
like
normally
and subscribe, hit that bell. But we have Christian in the hot seat.
Yes.
Yes,
I'm
so
normally
this is
hiding.
The chair of vulnerability.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
It feels nice. I like it.
The thinking chair.
Yes,
It is the
exactly.
thinking chair because like all the lights are hitting you. You got two people looking at you.
Yeah.
I'm really uncomfortable, but we're here. You know.
Yeah. The reason we're here and he's in the vulnerability chair is because today I've been doing a spin-off of My Story Matters, and we actually have our very own Christian Hernandez that's going to share his story,
Yeah.
his recovery journey, his just journey through life, and we're excited. It's not scripted. Christian,
Really,
how
no.
do you feel?
I am nervous. I feel slightly unprepared because Kayla gave me some really good advice a couple of days ago when I asked her how I should do it, and she said you should pray about it and think about it, and I did none of those. So, I'm here trying to be vulnerable, trying to be open because I also feel that I work better when I'm unscripted and like unfiltered and don't have a guideline to follow. I feel that's where I flow best. So.
You're a freestyle.
Yeah. It comes from my improv days in high school.
I love it.
So shout out you, Kaipa. What's up? But we'll get there when we get there.
Awesome. So let's just get started. I'm
Sure.
really just going to hand it over to you and just open up and
Yeah. Well, when it comes to my recovery journey, I feel like there's different phases in my life, right? There's what I would consider my childhood, then I would consider my high school days, and then post high school, which is kind of like college and today, and so I guess 4 if you can kind of see it like that so far, right? Because there's more to come. But mental health has been a big part of my life since I was a kid. It stems from having a mother who was actively involved in mental health, right? Whether it be because she has a doctorate in psychology, PhD, or PsyD, I think it is, and she has always been a promoter of mental health for the community. Right, in Puerto Rico, when we used to live there, she always did community work. Right, so I had that ingrained in my childhood a lot. But at the same time, she was going through her own mental health challenges, right, and her own bouts of depression and anxiety. And we went through a time. Well, I guess I'll get into that. I was born in California. What's up, Dodgers? I love my California people. I love California. Is one of those places where I feel very comfortable,
What part of California?
I moved all over the place. I born in Pasadena.
Oh, no way. That's where
yeah.
all my family's from.
Yep.
Well, I have a lot of family in Azusa.
Right next door.
Yeah,
So, but Pasadena
How
was my neck of the woods. But then, a lot of stuff happened. I only lived there for my mom told me it was 4 years, and then we moved to Puerto Rico. So the reason was because when my mom had me, my bio dad, as I called him, my biological father, he left. And he would come back to visit. He came back to visit in those 4 years, maybe once or twice. And in that time, my mom realized that she can't live that life. Like, she needs support. She was a single mom. So we went to Puerto Rico with my family over there, my grandparents to be exact. And I grew up with my grandparents They would take care of me in the day, and my mom would come at night after work, and I'll hang out with her, right, and go to our house.
Yeah.
And it wasn't something I noticed when I was a kid, right? Because I don't know, it's just never something that came to my mind. But I'll never forget the day when it actually started affecting me. I had to be like 9 years old, and Father's Day comes around, and I'm at church, and they're like, "Okay, kids, let's all prepare something for our dads." And I'm like, "I don't have a dad. I have my mom." And that was the first time at that young age where I realized, oh, I'm missing someone in my life, and or someone's not there. And you know, my mom, I love her so much. She did everything. She gave. I remember times, you know, that saying like moms give food off their. I remember her doing that. Like that was something she would always sacrifice, work hard, make sure that I had a good life, right? But during the day, I would stay with my grandparents, and they were the ones who would take me to school. And when I came back from school, guess what we would do? We would watch movies. My grandma had a whole cabinet where you would normally put clothes, just chock full of
This is where it started.
VHS tapes. That's where I found my love of movies, because of my grandparents. My grandma, she wanted to entertain me so much that she would constantly, like when she would come home from Walmart, and it wouldn't be 1 or 2 VHS tapes, it would be 10 in a bag of different kids movies, right? And that's where I found my love for movies, because she and I would watch them, my grandfather and I would watch them, and it literally, that's where it started. And sure enough, they also instilled that into my mother. Like, I'll never forget my mom telling me a story where she went to the drive-in with my grandfather to see The Exorcist. And that was like one of the most terrifying experiences ever. But she that's where she kind of found her love of horror movies and her love of like movies in general. So
it's almost like a tradition that's been passed down generation and generation.
It absolutely has. My grandfather, he was addicted to movies. He would go to the mall and buy. So I would stay with him like every day, right, from Monday through Friday, and we would go like on a Wednesday to buy the early tickets so that we can go on Friday. Like that's how dedicated my grandfather was to this, and he loved movies, and he would always tell us, "Let's go to the movies." And when he got a little older, then we would just watch movies at their house, right?
Yeah.
But there was, even though I found that kind of love for movies in that moment with my grandparents and with my mother, I really started to feel that I was missing someone, right? Mm-hmm. And kind of jump forward a little bit, I actually grew up in Puerto Rico. I was there for 10 years. And I made a lot of friends, made a lot of connections, a lot of family. And but there was always that feeling that I was missing someone. And I remember I would ask my mom what happened to my dad. He's not here anymore. You know, he left. And my mom was very open. That's one of the things I love about my mother specifically, is that she always instilled in me to talk about it, right? Just don't leave it in. Make sure that you're constantly talking about how you're feeling, so that, you know, we can support you in whatever way possible.
Do you feel like you internalized like your dad leaving?
Absolutely. There was a lot of that, especially in my high school years. That's when it really started to affect me, but we'll get to that. But where I wanted to go is that when I was 7, my mom met this dude, and part of church. He was the bass player. My mom was a singer, and they fell in love, and he became my stepdad, right? And that was a very important moment in my life, because that role was finally filled by someone, right? And my little brother was born a couple years after that, right? And that's my little family, right? And then, but tough times came in Puerto Rico. My mom got laid off being, I think she was 8 months pregnant or 7 months pregnant. It was a lot. So we had to make the decision, and we moved back to California. And that's where I did my high school years. In middle school in Puerto Rico, it wasn't necessarily easy for me. I never really talked about this. I talked to my mom about it, but I don't normally talk about my middle school experience, because it was filled with a lot of negative experiences. You know, a lot of times I feel that a lot of people like to joke especially when we're younger, but we don't really realize the impact that can have on a person. And I was always the one who played it off, right? I was always the one that didn't care, but it affected me a lot. And they would joke about everything, about my weight, about my family. There was always this big, because my mom, she's an ordained minister. So whenever I would go to school and just try to be a normal kid, I would always get that, oh, you're the pastor's kid. You're supposed to be like a goody two shoes. And I'm like, I'm not. I don't know what you're trying to expect of me. And yeah, there was just a lot of negative experience. I had very few friends that I could consider to be like close friends,
Do you feel like a lot of it was just like the pressures? I think that like of school and like the culture and like I don't know. I feel like I feel like that's so many kids' experience, like within like school during those time periods.
Yeah.
And I always wonder like, why is it like that?
Yeah. For me, I think when I was in middle school, I didn't think I was being bullied or that I was being made fun of. And the reason is because I was always the kid who was trying to look for attention. Because obviously now through therapy and through talking and research, I can identify that I was trying to fill something that was missing, right? And so I did it by trying to make people laugh, by kind of making jokes about myself to try to get a good laugh. I'm like, oh yeah, that's Christian. He's the funny guy, right? But obviously it affected me. And it was kind of like a double-edged sword because sure, I was making people laugh, but I was hurting myself in the process. But throughout all that journey, I just didn't talk about it. I didn't deal with it because I didn't want to, So all that pressure built into moving back to California, right? So we left my family from Puerto Rico, my friends. It was kind of a sad day, but it was also kind of a cool experience because we're going to the States. We're going to California.
Did you want to? Like, were you excited? Like, were you like, I don't want to leave here? Or were you like, I want to go on this?
I'm trying to think. I think I was excited in the sense that it was going to be a new experience, but at first it hurt.
Okay.
Because I had built a group of friends.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah.
My family was all there, so it was going to be a new experience, and it was going to be English.
Yeah.
Right. In Puerto Rico, my whole education was in Spanish, so only except English class. But English came around here in when I went to California. So it was my sophomore year of high school. I go to good old little town that nobody knows, Yucaipa, California. What's up, y'all? Yucaipa is like a very small town in the county, I guess, of San Bernardino. Literally, like no more than a couple thousand people. Like no more than that. It's really small. But throughout that experience, it was kind of the same. It was trying to fit in, trying to find my group of people. But I'll never forget the very first. I guess the first kind of maybe not traumatic, but the thing that really like affected my mental health at the time was when I got to the States and they told me that, oh, you're from Puerto Rico, because that's a Spanish speaking country, you have to take ELD classes, which are English language development, ELD, yeah. So, but I was like, well, why do I need to take these classes? Because I'm good at school. Like I speak English. I'm speaking fluently at you right now. Why do I have to take these classes? And they're like, oh, it's just a requirement for all the kids who are coming from other states that predominantly speak Spanish. And I was offended. But I went into the class hesitantly, but I went and I was pissed off. I've actually, now that I mentioned it, I don't think I've ever talked to my mom. I was so mad that I was in this class, and yeah, I made some good friends, some friends that I really cared about, but I just couldn't believe that I was stuck in this class. Why do I have to take a class to learn English when I've always aced every single English class that I've ever taken? You know what I'm saying? So they gave us some reports. I think I've talked about this. I try my best to be the best that I could be. I like to get the best grade in the class. I'm like, all the kids pick like level 3 books. I'm over here picking level 6s and level 7s because I just wanted more, right? And that when they saw how good I am, my teacher, God bless her soul, she was like, why is he here? why is Christian in this class? He obviously knows how to speak English, write it. He can write poetry. He can critically thinking English. Like, what the heck? So they moved me in my junior year, and that left an impact because it was my first experience feeling like an outsider, right? Because I was in a room full of people that looked like me, full of people that spoke Spanish like me, but I felt like I didn't belong there, you know, and that brought back those feelings of like, well, there's clearly something's missing here. Something's not right here. High school was great. I had a pretty pleasant experience. Part of the yearbook. Graduated. It was great. However, during that time, I go to college, and it was that was the time when my parents decided to separate. And that experience, I would say, was the one that kind of broke me, if you will. And I started going through this really weird spiral where I didn't want to do anything. I was heavily unmotivated. School became a second thought. I was failing all my classes. I was lying to my parents about it, you know. And it was a lot. It hurt. Because I guess I just couldn't cope with the idea that that my second dad, I'm losing him. You know, that's the second one. I just couldn't cope with that idea. And I think one of my biggest problems is that I tend to hold everything inside. That's one of my biggest struggles in life, is that it's not easy for me to share how I'm feeling. It's not easy for me to share how I'm doing. I've had to learn how to do that, you know? And that was the time where it really started, because I was feeling all these things, but my mom was going through it as well. Right. And she, quite frankly, was living it out loud. She was expressing it out loud. It really hurt her. You know, every time we would have a conversation, it would be a very negative conversation about my dad. And then I was thinking about my brother too. I was the one taking him to school. It was like, and during that time, you know, we moved to the mountains at that time, right? Because we were trying to just escape and relax, you know, not have to deal with that. And my dad stayed in the city, so I literally felt that distance,
the separation,
right? It was very literal. Right. Every time I would see my dad, it would be in the desert. Every time I would see my mom, it'd be snowing outside. It's kind of like, so that experience affected me a lot, especially with my brother, because I've always been very protective of my brother. He's been through some experiences himself, and you know, that whole thing it really hurt me. But I never really paid attention to it because I was always thinking, okay, I gotta be okay for my family. I gotta be okay because I gotta take care of my brother. I gotta be okay. Like this pretending, you know, and it led to more bad decision making when it came to my school and my personal relationship with people. It came to wanting to hating my father. That was a big one.
You're in college at this time?
I was in college at this time. I was failing classes. I didn't want to do anything work. I was so unmotivated. I was working with youth at the time, which was my dream.
Yeah.
And I was so unmotivated, man. Everything was just like in the floor, like I don't want to do anything. And I would just put up this mask trying to pretend that everything was okay, but it really wasn't. Yeah. And you could see it in my life. But I remember one day I was talking to one of my good friends, Jerry. What's up, Jerry? And I'm opening up to him and I say, I feel like I lost another dad and I don't know what to do about it, you know? And during that time, my school offered therapy, you know, and my mom is a professional psychologist, so but weirdly enough, therapy was not ever something that I wanted to look for, you know? I was never interested in it because I always thought I was okay. Like I didn't need that. Especially in high school and college when I really needed it. I was like, I don't need that crap, you know, I'll just do by myself.
Would you say that you felt that way due to like also like a stigma with like therapy, or like seeing like your mom being a psychologist, like, you know, like what did that play into it too?
I think so. I think there was a part of me that was like, well, I'm the kid of a therapist or a psychologist. I don't need to. I'm obviously okay. If I need to talk to anything, I'll talk to my mom, right? Like, so maybe there was a stigma there, you know. But
I think sometimes that hinders a lot of people. You know, I think there's a few things like I'm hearing you say is like, one, just that mentality of like, I'm okay, you know, like the mask, right? The mask when like I'm really feeling a lot of these stacked up feelings, and rather than getting to like the root of it, I'm just like moving through life. But then you're seeing like, I always say like, if we don't deal with our problems, they deal with us in some way, shape, form, or another. And so like in your process, it's like all of these things are happening and you have so much going on internally, but you're, I guess like avoiding at this point, like kind of dealing with those things. And I think there could be like a lot of different reasons for that, like culturally, just the mentality, you know, stigma, like all of this stuff of like, how do I handle this stuff? And I feel almost like a lot of young people feel sometimes so alone in their struggle, or whatever those barriers are that are hindering them from, you know, unpacking and releasing and processing those
yeah.
emotions.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that really disturbed me about the time is that I was a big, I wasn't practicing what I preach, you know,
Okay.
and that affected me as well because
Because you were working with youth.
I was working with youth at the time, and I would tell them like, yeah, if you're not feeling good, you go talk to a therapist, or if you're not feeling good, like depend on on your supports. You know, I was doing those conversations with the students, but I wasn't doing it with myself, right?
Yeah.
So I start seeing this great guy. I don't even remember his name, but he starts talking to me about it. And when I went in there, we started talking about just some of the things that I was struggling with, you know. And he starts working with me and talking about, oh, have you ever really thought about or worked on that idea that you know, your dad is not in the picture. You know, you have a stepfather, but now you're telling me that two dads, are not in the picture anymore. And I was like, oh, no. And if my mom watches this, I'm sorry I never told you this. But I hid it from my mom, what we really were talking about. I was kind of hiding under like, oh, yeah, we talked about it, like how I'm feeling and stuff. But in reality, we were really digging into the whole situation, right? My parents separating and stuff. And I never told her because I didn't want her to get hurt, right? But that whole experience was affecting me immensely. A couple years later pass, my parents kind of start rebuilding, you know, figuring out how to make it work. And we're like, okay, we can't live in California anymore. I think it's time to go to Florida. And that one hurt more than Puerto Rico because now I had my adult relationships, right?
Yeah.
Or I guess my college day relationships, you know, people that I considered to be my brothers, you know, people that I considered to be close with, not only people from school, but from church and from regular life, right? I was building a community of people, and to this day, I'll say it with my whole heart. I miss California. It's something that I've always thought about, but my family was moving over here, and I've always been a very family oriented person. So I couldn't bear the thought of being away from my family. So I said, you know what? F it. Let's do it. This is during COVID. My grandfather died during that time too when we moved. That was a big reason why we moved, because we were like, okay, we want to be closer to family. And Florida is only 3 hours away from Puerto Rico on a plane, right? So we were like, we have to do it. So I said, sure, why not? And when I moved to Florida, that is when things started getting worse in terms of my mental health. I really started battling with motivation. I really started battling with wanting to be productive in school. I was really battling a lot of stuff, and there was more lies and more hurt and more pain for my family because I was putting up a mask and I wasn't opening up at all about how I was feeling, how I was doing.
Because you stopped doing therapy because therapy was in California too.
Yeah.
Okay.
And my mom catches me in a lie that I was saying at the time, and she's like, either you go see a life coach or you're going to move out. And I was like, well, I guess I'm going to go see a life coach. So I go meet up with this amazing life coach, and she just starts pointing me into a direction of thinking more about how my mental health is affecting my motivation. How can I use my these tips or whatever to mold that to something positive for my life?
Mm-hmm.
So I really started working on motivation. I really started working on why I was feeling bad. And sure enough, I decide to make some big changes in my life. And I decide to work harder at school. And I decide to do a big career change where I was working at a church at the time when I moved in Florida, working with students. And I said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to make a big change. I'm going to be a kindergarten teacher. Heck yes. And because I guess my mentality at the time was, well, I've worked with every age. I want to have that last stage in my resume somehow.
Yeah.
Like I've worked with middle school, elementary, high school, college. Like I've done it all.
Yeah.
The only group that I had never worked with is the little freaking crawlers. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to go do that. And I did that for about a year. And it was a great experience. I met really great people. Shout out to everybody at KinderCare. And it was, I have nothing negative to say about it. But along the way, I quickly noticed that it just wasn't for me.
Mm-hmm.
Right? This wasn't the job that I was meant to find. And lo and behold, I go on, my mom had made some connections here, and she met up, and she knew somebody who works at this really cool agency. And, she gave my mom the information to apply. So and my mom gave it to me. I applied, and then I got an interview at South Florida Wellness Network. And long story short, I got a job, then I started working. No, I'm kidding. I'm not going to go through all that, but I got the job. And I think when I started working here, I had already been starting working on that mental health part of it. But again, I had let it go a little bit because I didn't want to focus on it that much anymore. I was like, okay, I'm moving into a new step. I feel like I already did my part. I went to a life coach. I've done the therapy. Like I'm good. Mm-hmm. I'm just going to move straight. And I got here, and every single thing that they were teaching me was, man, I'm not okay. I need to get this figured out right now. And I did. And I started applying what I was going back to like practice what you preach, right?
Yeah.
I started applying what I was teaching to my peers or the participants that I work with. And everything changed.
Yeah.
I started seeing my own therapist again, and I started working harder on school. Kayla knows, I met my fiance, and now because of the work that I'm doing here, I've been able to utilize some of these tools to help our relationship grow stronger, and there's still some parts of me that I'm trying to work on. I still hide a lot. I still have trouble sharing how I'm feeling. I even this podcast right now, like I this is not my comfort zone, right? But I quickly realized while working here that there's an importance in letting people know how you feel.
Yeah.
Why? Because when you put up those walls is when you really feel alone. So I guess for me, that was always the biggest struggle, is that I tried to fight all these feelings by myself because I was afraid that if I told people, I was going to hurt them, especially my mom. Obviously I have a stronger bond with my mom than anybody else in my family. She raised me by herself for 7 years,
Yeah.
And even when my stepfather is in the picture, she was the one doing the most of it because she was the mom, right?
Yeah.
So, I learned along the way that hiding I'll say it this way. I learned that hiding avoids problems. But what I didn't realize until I started really opening up is that opening up solves problems.
That's powerful, yeah.
And when I learned that is when everything kind of refocused, right? Today, I've met with a therapist. She diagnosed me with anxiety, which makes sense for a lot of the things that I've been through. I'll never forget when she first told me that. I was like, "You're wrong, no freaking way." And then we started talking about it, and my mom lands in the hospital. This was a couple months ago, and sure enough, I start having a panic attack in the middle of driving. Kayla, I remember I told Kayla. Kayla, my mom's in the hospital. I gotta go. And she was like, "Oh, no worries, you go." And as I'm driving, I'm like, "Everything's gonna be okay. It's fine." I think it's a God thing because I literally a couple weeks ago I had just met with my therapist and she diagnosed me and we were working on some tools and whatever. And I'm driving to see my mom and I'm having like a panic attack. Like my heart starts racing. I start sweating. I couldn't breathe. I was like, I was looking at the road and I was kind of like, ugh. And I go through my steps. I do the focused activities that we were working on, and sure enough, it worked. I get to the hospital. I see my mom knocked out. She's unconscious. I'm okay at the time, but then I have to step outside because I was hyperventilating. And I run through my steps again. Sure enough, I come down. Come back inside. I'm crying. My dad's crying. It's a whole thing. But throughout that experience is when I really learned that, okay, there's still some stuff that I need to work on, right? I'm not all there yet.
Yeah.
But keyword yet, at the same time, I've lived a lot of experiences in my life that one could consider traumatic, but I'm still here, and I'm still fighting. And now I get the opportunity to help other people fight too, and through that experience, funny enough, it's helping me fight too.
Yeah.
I think that's my favorite job. My favorite part about the job is that not only do I get to help people figure out how to fight their battles, but by helping them, I'm figuring out how I have to fight my own battles, you know? And it's powerful. So in a nutshell, that's really my story. A lot of moments where I really felt that hiding was going to be the best option.
Yeah.
But then realizing that hiding doesn't do much.
Right.
All it does is cause more pain. And I remember there were some days where I would just start crying and I couldn't explain it. I was like, it's just I'm just tired. And I would always say that was my favorite line to say. I'm just tired, man. I'm tired. It's been a long day. And like it wasn't until I actually sought help and started talking with a professional that I realized that it's not just that I'm tired. It's that there's more to it. Mm-hmm. There's a lot that I haven't unpacked.
Yeah.
That's why. And I started noticing the signs really when my mom would talk to me about my dad. And I care for my dad a lot. I love him. Mm-hmm. So when she would talk to me, there was so much hate in my heart because I felt like he knew. This is what my mind was doing back when, I was thinking about it. I was like, my dad left me. My bio dad left, right? And now here comes this guy and like he's psyching me up for 12 years pretending to be my father. And now he's leaving too because that's all I was getting from my mom, right? But what I realized in that journey is that wasn't the case at all, right? That has nothing to do with me. And I'll never forget, not so long ago, he came to talk to me like, hey, I just want to let you know that whatever happens between me and your mom, it has nothing to do with how much I love you. And dads don't really do that, especially him. He lets me know he cares about me in different ways, but saying it verbally is not one of those, like most dads. But I'll never forget, he told me this and I just start bawling.
Yeah.
Because it was that confirmation, right?
For sure.
And yeah, so I guess moral of my story, if anybody's listening, I hope that you take into consideration that holding it doesn't help.
Right.
You think you're helping people, but it doesn't. And I learned that the hard way, because things in my life started falling apart.
Yeah. Well, think about there's this saying, secrets keep us sick. And I always just have clung to that. But I'm a very visual person. So I imagine me carrying a backpack and just filling it with bricks and then just like going on with life with this backpack, right? Like this backpack of life, and it's just filled with bricks. And I'm just keep going. And rather than unpacking those things, now the bricks are weighing me down. Now I'm in pain and it hurts to move forward. So I'm losing motivation. I'm losing my ability to like move through life.
Energy.
And then I'm crying because now it's really painful carrying these bricks. And so then I just imagine like, man, what would it be like to just set that backpack down and unpack those bricks, you know? And it's scary because it's like a lot of heavy stuff, but in there's freedom,
Right.
you know? And I think that, you know, even from your story, like what I'm kind of grabbing towards is that, you know, I think even as kids, like from childhood, like you're experiencing like these bouts of, you know, what people would maybe say like depression, but I think they stemmed off of like a root of, you know, abandonment or rejection or like maybe not being enough because you internalized, you know, like with your father, you know, like he left me. I have now this other father. There was this excitement but there was still this probably fear, you know, in that aspect of like this person, what if they leave too?
Yeah.
You know, and I think how many people kind of just feel alone in that, you know? And so
Yeah.
I thank you for your vulnerability and sharing that process of like really, you know, finding yourself and seeking out the help and just how much courage it takes to be vulnerable and to process through your emotions and not feel like I have to just be okay. You know, sometimes it's like okay to just be like, man, I'm not okay. And like, this is what's going on.
Man, that's my favorite saying in the world. It's okay to not be okay.
Yeah.
And I've taken that to heart so many times because I feel that sometimes we live in a world where saying that you're not okay makes you look weak.
Yeah.
Right? That's the mentality. And I don't like that mentality because I don't think it's fair to criticize the most vulnerable and strongest thing you
Yeah.
can do, which is tell people that you're not doing good. You know? To criticize that just boggles my mind because it's just unfair. Meanwhile, you're over here hiding all your secrets and hiding all your stuff from yourself and from your family, and you're pretending that you're the stronger one. It's like that's the thing I had to learn is that I wasn't strong. You know, I'm stronger today because I've decided to put in the work and talk with my support groups.
Yeah.
You know, I tell my fiance everything, and it's strengthened our relationship. Same thing with my mom. Like I don't like lying to her, and I try to tell her as much as I can, you know, and it's improved our relationship.
Yeah.
You know, so
There's
yeah,
power in that. I mean, there's so much power in that when we're truthful. You know, I always say like the truth may hurt, but the truth is truly what will set you free. And it also like really has the ability to transform relationships, you know, and just by being honest and like coming together and like being able to work through, you know, the hard things because life is difficult, you know, there's difficulty in life. It's how we choose to grow from it. And it's 99% of what or 1% of what happens to you, 99% of how you respond to it. But when we don't know, we can't do better, you know, and that's the biggest thing is like, I may not be okay right now, but I'm trying to get better, you know, and it's just like that.
yeah. that's the real moral of my story. I'm not okay.
Yeah.
Like I wish I could stand here and say that I'm doing a lot better. You know, that I feel like part of my story matters, especially recently, has been like I went through this like horrendous thing, and now I'm like 10 times better. I promise you guys, I'm not. But
It's a journey, though.
but it's a journey.
It's a journey.
Right? And I'm still growing. I'm still learning. I'm not perfect, but you know what? I'm trying, and through that process, I'm learning a lot, and I'm growing, and I'm becoming the person that I always wanted to be, which was proud of myself. Right?
That's awesome.
That's another thing, you know. Because I was being bullied and because I was being picked on, my self-image got affected quite a lot, you know. And I'll never forget. This was back in Puerto Rico. I came to my mom crying once because the kids were calling me names, and my mom was trying her best to be like, "Hey, don't pay no mind to it. You know, it's just words, right?"
Oh, it's so hard, though.
But it's so hard, man. And I would look at myself in the mirror and I hated what I was seeing.
Yeah.
You know, I when I think that when people say that in movies, it's always so cliche, but I lived it.
Yeah.
You know, I looked at there were days I just didn't want to look at myself in the mirror. I did not like what I was seeing. I didn't like the person who I was. Back in high school, that's when most of the hiding was happening, was in high school, right? there was with my friends and with some people that I really cared about, I was pretending to be this person because I didn't want to like how do I say this? I didn't like who I was because, and part of the reason was because I was looking out for everybody else, but I wasn't looking out for me, right? Because that's what people do when they don't like themselves. They help other people, but they don't want to help themselves, right? So it's taken me a lot to be like, yo, I like, and I'm gonna say it because I've never really said it. I like the version of me that I am today.
That's awesome.
And it's not perfect, but damn it, I'm working on it, and that's what matters.
You're a whip.
Yeah, because high school Christian and college Christian was not working on it, and you can see it like in my history, the lies, the school, the relationships, the people that I was with, the things that I was doing. Like y'all, like I'm not gonna get into too much of it because it's a family friendly podcast, but I did my fair share of really not so great things in college and stuff because I was trying to find who I was. Well, Michael said it, so I'll say, I was the kid going to like strip clubs and like drinking and hanging out with friends and like doing stuff that I was supposed to.
Everybody has their story.
I was trying to fit in, and I was trying to be like, okay, maybe if I pretend to be this really cool person, I can be like, I can be the cool kid, right? And like I hated it. I was pretending that I didn't like it, that I did like it, but I hated every sense of it. All things considered, that's not who I am today, and I don't like that I went through that I made those decisions, but at the same time, I'm trying my best to change and to become a better person. So ultimately, like I said, if you ask high school Christian or college Christian or even middle school Christian, do you like the person you see in the mirror? They would have said no. You ask me today, I would say absolutely.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys noticed. I didn't really speak the whole podcast just because I wanted to take in and obviously listen and hear your story and understand a little bit more as to why you feel the way you feel about things. But I do have questions.
Oh, no. All right. Well, I asked you questions, so it's only fair.
Admit it. So I could tell, and obviously I resonate to that as well, that your father has been a big part of your life and the way things have gone. My question is to you, do you think your father is the reason why you have all your challenges in life? Because to me, it seems like a lot of your issues that you ran into in life are something that a father being in place could have taken care of or helped with. And I'm saying that mostly not because I want to pry into your life, because I noticed a lot of the challenges that you ran into are challenges that I ran into as well.
Yeah.
Not specifically all of them, but a lot of them.
Yeah. I would say in part of it, yes. I think especially those, I feel I learned in my child development classes that those first, 8-9 years are so crucial to the development of a child. That's why, we hear these horrible things happen to these young kids and like they're affected for life. There's a reason, because the ages from 0 to like I think it's 7 or 8 are the most crucial years for a child. You want to teach a kid 3 languages, do it from between the ages of 0 and 7. They'll learn it no problem. And that's why when something happens to a child, it sticks.
Yeah.
Right? Because they're in that crucial part of development where it's like, imagine you're building a box and you're trying your best to keep things out of the box as the box is building, right? It's building itself, but you're trying to keep like trauma away, trying to keep bullying away, you're trying to keep watching inappropriate movies and shows and music away. Like you're trying to keep all these things away. But once they get in there, those are the development years. Boom, the box closes is there, right? And now when you're an adult, funny enough for the analogy, you have to unpack that, right? So I feel that, not having a dad was a part of it. I think there's also, generational mental health is a real thing. I think my grandmother...
As far as like your anxiety?
Yeah, and depression, yeah. My grandmother suffered with it. My mother suffered with it. And now I'm suffering with it too. And suffering is a strong word. Maybe I want to say I'm dealing with it, right? I'm battling to make the situation better. But it is a real thing. You know?
Because, I mean, like I said, you dealt with a similar situation to myself, not to put myself in your shoes because it's your story, of course. But, like, I can tell, like, you were very anxious in those moments and, like, there was a lot of stress and a lot of love and a lot of care that you had towards those people, towards your family. And it's funny because I felt like when I shared my story, I felt I told you guys like I was very distant almost. I felt almost very callous towards the way things were going. And I bring that point up to just show that like how people can go through similar situations somewhat and completely deal with them in opposite
Different ways, yeah.
Yeah, because how I was very turned off and very just like, I don't care.
Yeah.
And like, not to say that like I'm a tougher person. It means that maybe subconsciously I was dealing with those same emotions, but I just kind
Dealt
of
with it differently.
Yeah, I just kind of was like, whatever, you know.
I don't think we can prescribe one way to people that are all so different. I always think that too, because you could have two very similar experiences, but they take two very different.
No, yeah,
avenues
and
of
I say that
coping.
because I and it's not just for Chris, it's for other people that may be dealing with the same situation. It's like he may have saw me as like in high school I was the captain of my soccer team and I knew a lot of people, but at the same time, well, high school is a little later on, but like in middle school, similar situations, but I was dealing with a lot of crap mentally that I subconsciously pushed away.
Yeah, but especially because we're young, like when you're a kid,
well, you don't know. You're not
mental
like,
health is not a real thing.
Unpack these things
Exactly.
because it's gonna really impact your relationships, and like you just don't know these
you
things.
don't. You're young.
Yeah.
And I just want to say straight off the bat, I love my dad. I call him my dad. Because he's the one that stepped up and stayed.
Your stepfather?
Yeah, my stepfather.
I call Peter my stepdad.
Yeah,
my stepdad, my dad as well.
I love him with all my heart. He came during a time where I really needed him.
Yeah.
And even during something I didn't touch on, but something that's important to mention, during that whole process of the separation, he was there.
Yeah.
No, he wasn't like a person I wasn't seeing. Like I would see him every single weekend without fail, because my parents were trying to still help us keep that relationship with him, my mom specifically, and I would see him on a regular basis, and he was always checking up on me. Christian, how are you doing? Do you need anything?
I say it all the time. That's got to be probably one of the hardest jobs, because one, it's not your kid, so you don't have that full not responsibility, but because you have the responsibility 100%.
I would
don't have
say
the
connection.
Power.
I think that connection is not there yet. It needs time to develop.
True.
Right? But one of the great things, and one of the things I love about my dad, is that from the moment he saw me, he tried. Like he was always like, I love when you said like when your dad brought you like those, he would buy you those little bouncy balls. My dad was the same way. Yeah. He's the one that taught me how to play the claw machine, and he would, every time he got a new toy from the claw machine, he would give it to me. He used to collect WWE action figures, and he wouldn't let anybody touch those, not his friends, not his sister, not his family. Nobody could touch those. Those were his babies, his collections. Then I came into the picture, and he used to let me play with them. I destroyed them.
Oh my
God. I broke them. He had a little ring and everything, and I messed it up. But he let me do it because he cared about me. He wanted me to be happy. So and to this day, like my dad constantly is trying to like check up on me, support me however he can. Yeah. And that's why I think it's important to mention that.
For sure.
My dad was there, and he did try, and he was a good role model, and I still love him to this day, and he's still a crucial part of my life. But the reality is that there were things inside of me that I was dealing with that didn't have to do anything with him.
Right.
And I blamed him because he was the guy who was immediately there, right? But in reality, it wasn't his fault at all. Right. And that was the hardest lesson I had to learn in therapy.
Yeah.
I wasn't mad at my dad. I wasn't mad at my mom. I wasn't even mad about the separation. I was mad that it was reminding me of past situations, right? And that's when I was like, oh, S word,
Yeah.
Like, yeah. So to answer your question, I think, yes, there's a big part of it that has to do with my bio dad not being there and feeling like somebody didn't want me, right, and leaving me. Same thing when my grandfather passed away. He was a very big parental figure in my life, and then he passed away. And even though it's selfish to think that he left, he literally died, like, obviously. But there was still that feeling like another important person in my life left.
Yeah.
And it took me a while to unpack that and to realize that it's not that they're leaving, is that things are changing. Not everybody's life is connected to yours. There's more to that, right? It took me a long time to learn that. That's why today I don't blame anybody. Today, wherever he is, my bio dad, I don't blame him. I get it. Life is hard, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
Right? So yeah, that's
Very cool.
I hope I
Awesome.
answered your question.
Awesome.
Yeah. All right. Well, just to kind of wrap things up, I just want to say thank you again just for sharing. I definitely got a lot from your story of just kind of walking through
Mm-hmm.
just adversities and understanding who you are, I guess, outside of that experience with your father, which was seems to be that was the root, that built off of all the other aspects of your life. But just for our viewers, if you want to give just one last final closing thoughts.
Yeah. Well, I'll give two if that's okay.
Yeah.
Number one, I would say find things that inspire you and that can, we call them wellness tools here. I have my movies that reminds me, I was telling them that I've been feeling really nostalgic lately.
Mm-hmm.
So because my fiance has never seen the Harry Potter franchise.
Yikes.
So
That's crazy.
I know she's not really big into.
I always
movies.
find it crazy when people don't
watch the
My ex was
Zeitgeist
the
movies.
same way. She didn't watch Home Alone and movies. I'm like,
Yeah, crucial movies for my
childhood did
existence.
you have? Like
these were my movies.
Yeah.
But she's never seen them. So it's interesting because it's kind of like a blank canvas. It's like I'm
That's fun, yeah.
vicariously
Yeah.
experiencing these movies through her eyes.
Yeah, that's exciting.
And I'll never forget when I don't want to spoil for people who haven't seen it, but we're watching the whole franchise. So last night it was Chamber of Secrets, and we find out that Tom Riddle is Voldemort, and she goes, and I loved it. It was like I'm living through her. But the point is that I've been feeling real nostalgic, and I've been watching these movies that I loved as a kid. But one of the movies that I was watching this past weekend, I'm trying to find out which one's my favorite Pixar movie. So I've been watching those Pixar movies that I grew up on and being okay, which one is my favorite? And I started watching some of them, and my mind went back to that couch in Puerto Rico with my grandfather watching those movies. And it filled me with so much joy. It wasn't sadness.
what's your favorite Pixar movie?
I'm going through the list. So far, my top two are Finding Nemo and Monsters.
I'm Toy Story, Finding Nemo, and what's the when the kids they were detectives in the future and they had Spy Kids.
Oh,
Spy
okay.
Kids.
Yeah.
Oh, Spy Kids.
I remember
those
Spy
are probably my
Kids.
top three.
Yeah.
Spy Kids is dope, man.
Yeah.
But it brought me back. So finding those things, those wellness tools,
Yeah,
right,
it's super important.
is crucial. Music is a big one for me too. I'm the kind of guy that I was talking with one of my coworkers here. His name is Max, and he saw my database where I keep track of all my albums. I have a Google sheet where I keep track of all the albums that I've ever listened to, and because I just like doing that. It's part of my. It makes me feel good, and it's a good distraction. But I do it, and he saw it. And I was like, what is that? I was like, oh, this is my music, my album database, all the albums that I've ever heard. And I kind of went through it, so that's another tool that I've utilized. So finding those wellness tools, stuff that helps you deal with when you're not feeling great.
Music or movies?
Movies.
I
love music. Well, here's what I'll say. Music.
That's hard.
Movies can
my
exist.
God,
I could
music.
do-
Yeah,
for
I think
sure.
music for me too.
Movies can
Hands down.
exist without music. But,
That's hard,
but
though.
music can exist without movies.
Yeah.
Think about it like that. So it
Oh,
really,
for sure. Yeah.
it's music. It's really music.
Yeah.
But if I had to pick and choose, it would have to be movies. I love music, but I have a stronger connection to movies than I do with music.
Yeah, your heart.
Interesting.
It pulls on his heartstrings. It's his story of,
Yeah.
his.
No, of course.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I have a stronger connection. But
Well, Well, I want to say thank you for sharing your story as well, Chris.
Yeah.
I know it's
well,
not
let me
easy
say
to
let me
do.
say the last thing real quick.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
So wellness tools, but most importantly, I think the biggest reason why I've been able to deal with all this and find my way to a positive outlook in life is because of my faith, and I'll be the first to say that that wasn't always the case. I've been a church kid my entire life. My mom was a minister. My dad was a bass player in the band. Like, I've been in church my whole life, but I never really connected with my faith until I started realizing that the one dad that never really left was God, you know? And when I made that connection, a lot of things changed in my life, right? In terms of like, okay, I'm not alone, you know? If I'm going to write a Father's Day card to someone, it'll be to God, you know? And so my faith really helped me get to where I am today, where now it's funny because I'm connecting therapy, I'm connecting what we do here, and I'm connecting my faith all in one little bubble, and that's really what's keeping me together, you know? But at the top of all that is my faith, you know? Because all these concepts that we talk about, all these things that we've mentioned, at the end of the day, it's biblical. You know, it's like love, faith, support, finding hope, making sure that you're surrounded by people, making sure that you stand up for your faith, making sure you read the word so you get educated, making sure that you take up personal responsibility, right? All these are concepts that teaches the word, and I feel that in my life, that's been the one thing that always keeps coming back in everything that I've done.
Yeah, for sure.
The one thing that doesn't abandon.
Yep.
Yeah, I've noticed like the more that people are not meant to be fully independent, and as much as we tell ourselves that we are, we're really not. So people do find dependency on others, whether they be a relationship with your mother or your partner or your friend or whatever. But I have noticed that people that do find the relationship with God, they tend to have to lean too much onto those partners, too much. You know what I'm saying? And I'm saying that let's give an example. Let's say my parents. They have a great relationship, but them having that relationship with God allows them not to distrust or have this extra feelings
or
of
be
anxiety
codependent,
or just it's as simple as being too much.
Yeah.
Because as humans, we can be too much sometimes when we are so fully dependent on one person. But when you depend on Christ, you know, and
it's
you lean
different.
on Him, you don't have to lean so far onto others.
And you're not leaning on something that's flawed, that'll fail you.
Exactly. You're leaning
that's
on a
the
rock.
biggest thing.
Firm foundation.
That was my foundation with my dad too, is when I realized, man, I have a heavenly Father that I can look to for perfection, for love, for all of those things that will never fail me. And it allowed me to have grace and just view people in such a different way where like, man, I'm unfazed by that. Yes, there's things that hurt in my humanness and all of that, but at the end of the day, man, I know where my rock is.
Yeah, Christ is my Dwayne Johnson.
Yeah,
for sure.
So awesome. That's a great way.
Man,
to
I really
close.
thought they were gonna get that joke, man. You
I
got
didn't.
it.
I
You
got
got
it
it in the comments. Yeah, Dwayne the Rock Johnson. I said,
Okay, I got it,
God
I
is
got it.
my Dwayne Johnson.
That's funny.
You can't explain it, the whole joke.
Yeah.
Well, you guys didn't get it. I was expecting a bigger laugh. See, somebody at home is right now is laughing
Yeah,
at
that's
this.
right.
Thank you, that one person.
Well, thank you for joining us for another week on Talkin Wellness, and we are excited to see y'all next week. We have an amazing schedule planned of podcasts, so stay tuned.
This month is going to be wild.
Yeah.
Big changes for the room.
Yeah.
Big change for the room. Cool people coming in to share their stories.
Yeah. And changes in us too. Okay.
Yeah.
And changes in
Talkin
us.
Wellness doesn't just change
In-
people who
in-
view it, but
yeah.
it just changes. It's just
Yeah.
changes happening.
Chris is dyeing his hair blonde next week.
Yeah,
so
you'll see it, man.
tune in.
Tune in. No. But yeah, man, this month is going to be crazy. Y'all, you definitely want to tune in. It's going to be really cool. So we hope you enjoyed my story, and let us know what kind of topics do you want to hear us talk about. You know, we'll talk to you next week. We'll see you all next week. Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye. What is that thing you do?
You got to sync the audios. So I'll wait
Wow,
until
that hurt my clap
that hurt your clap.
or my hands.
That hurt my
Bloopers. Anyways, 3, 2, 1, syncing audio.